Mr. Walmark, he walked out of the room.
I'm here. I'm present. I'm Fran Barrett.
Okay. All right, Mr. Salento, are you ready to go forward with this case?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
I can proceed.
Mr. Walmark,
Yes.
come on up here and sit at this table.
Who's table?
Just up here.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Walmark and Ms. Barrett, you're the petitioners in this matter.
Correct.
Go forward, please.
Well, this has been an ongoing issue with Mr. Salento. Actually, my daughter got a restraining order against Mr. Salento. I believe it was last year. I don't have the exact date. And subsequently, he has shown up at our house 3 times since he's had the restraining order. And I had called the law enforcement officer each time. And one of the sheriffs suggested that my wife and I get our own restraining order. And so that's what we're attempting to do. I'm not really sure what Mr. Salento's intention is to continue to show up at our house. I don't know what he wants. He's making us very nervous. I have several questions. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to ask them or not, but we're just very concerned about his stability and why he's bothering us.
Does your daughter live at your residence?
Yes, she does.
And when he appears at your residence, does he ask for her?
He has in the past, yes. And he actually used to be very friendly and would acknowledge that he wasn't supposed to be there. But the last few times he was there, he has been very agitated and a little bit unnerved. And one time it seemed very angry. And then the last time I didn't even acknowledge him. I just called 911 right away.
And the last time he appeared, you said he called 911 right away.
Yes, that's what I was instructed to do by Detective Lockett.
And was your daughter present at the time?
The last time she was not.
All right. So they didn't charge Mr. Salento with the violation of the order.
Yes,
They did, because he was still, I mean, the order is that he can't come to the property as well, not alone just my daughter. And he did. And so he has actually been jailed twice now. The first time he came on after her restraining order was February 6th. They did not arrest him, which was okay. But then he showed up again on June 4th or June 12th. And he did get arrested one day. And then 8 days later, he showed up again and was arrested again. And what I think it was Judge Meyer put a bond on him for to hold him on until they can pay.
I see.
And then I think he's been, and that's where I had him served at one point while he was incarcerated.
Is the order your daughter has from this court or from the Olympia Municipal Court?
This one.
This court?
Yeah.
All right. You said you had some questions of the court or of Mr. Salento?
Well, I guess at one of Mr. Salento, I want to know why he keeps coming when he knows he shouldn't. I mean, I have two very long driveways, one from the county road to my driveway, and then a very long thing to my driveway. And as he's driving down there, I can't understand why he's not saying I should not be doing this and turn around. Why does he keep showing up?
Okay. What else?
Well, I have two, one real good friend and another acquaintance that have also had problems with Mr. Salento. One of them has her own restraining order because he was hanging out at her property, confused somehow with my daughter. And then another acquaintance had a run-in with him and had to call the police on him as well. And so I guess one of my questions is, does he have any prior incidences that we don't know about? And what really is his mental state? I mean, he's got us pretty shaky. We've put up security devices. We've got a gate across our road now, and he just doesn't seem to stop.
Okay. Ms. Barrett, do you have anything you wish to add?
No, that he's made our life very uncomfortable, and we don't feel safe in our home anymore. And that's sad.
So the last time he appeared was June 20th?
Yes,
All right.
that we know of.
All right. All right, Mr. Salento, what's your response to the
Okay. So this is going to be the
hold on. What's your response to the requested restraining order in this case?
Okay, so this is going to be a tale of two cities. So one side, you have the records, which have been going on. The other side, you have the sensibility of the trash bin. And the only person who know that is the Walmart. They will know about the trash bin, the lights, the noises from the neighbors, and all that stuff. They will know what that means. Now, will they actually testify? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. This is the real world. But me coming over, it's because of those responses. The trash bin, which they do know about it, and the lights, which they do know about it. That is it. Other than that, Your Honor, I really do not want to go over it. I don't want to bug them. Of course, I do not want to bug them. I just thought that was the scenario. Since someone also once asked, do I have family, parents to talk to? I do. I did talk to them, actually. They also told me I shouldn't go all the way to Hannah because they believe Hannah's playing me. That's what they said. So, yes. Someone also once asked me, too, why did it take so long to get there? Well, it took me so long is this. I do like Hannah, but I like Hannah to a point of favoritism, which is not a good thing because I'm not conscious. I don't do anything reasonable. I lash out. I have, all that thing is not good for me. Yes. Do I think she's very pretty and all that? Yes. But no, I shouldn't go for her. And I know. So if this is the stop, then this is the stop, Your Honor. So that's all I just want to say. Now, I know it's confusing. You look confused. Anyway, so.
Walmart, you know anything about the trash cans and the lights he's talking about?
I have no idea something about the trash. Maybe the lights. Not exactly sure. I mean, we've done some security measures, but he shouldn't know about that because he shouldn't be there.
My trash bin. My
trash bin.
So be quiet right now. Let Mr. Walmart speak, and then we'll give you another opportunity.
Yeah, I have no idea what trash bin he's talking about, unless it's because he did have an altercation with a friend of mine. I don't recall the trash bin being involved in that. And then I did hear him talking about some other people. He threw supposedly, this is what they told me, a very large putty knife type thing over someone's house and into their yard, almost striking them. And this is what I was told. And they went over to confront him about that. And he was very, very agitated and supposedly wouldn't open the door and talk to this other gentleman. Again, those are not things that I was involved in. They're just things because I know these people.
All right.
And sir,
You said somebody told you to go there to find out about trash cans or lights? Who told you?
I'm sorry, you're talking to me?
I said, I thought I understood you to say that someone told you to go to the property to find out about the trash cans or the lights.
No one
Who told you to go there?
No one told me. It's just been an ongoing occurrence. That's all.
Did anybody tell you not to go to that property?
Yana, this thing has been going on for a very long time. And the thing is, Yana, it's not going to make sense because a lot of it is he said, she said. So the thing is, Yana, that's what's going on. Now, if this is about the end result of not going over there, then absolutely, Yana, this is what we're going towards. Because I had enough too. So this is, do you get it?
No, I didn't hear too much of that. Say that again and sit up because
Okay.
you're speaking down and we can't really see and hear what you're saying.
Okay, where we at? What were we talking about? Oh, the trash bin. Yeah, this is getting really confusing. What were you talking about? I'm sorry.
All right. Well, let me ask you this question,
Okay.
Mr. Salento. You said no one told you to go to the property to resolve some issues, correct?
No.
Did anyone tell you not to go to the property?
Yes, the judge. Yes.
Okay. And you went anyway. Is that right? You went again
Yeah.
on the 20th of June?
Yes.
And you understand the terms of the order are you're not to go within 1,000 feet of the residence of Ms. Walmart,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
All right. So if I issue an order today that says you're not to go to the residence looking for either Ms. Walmart or Mr. Walmart or Ms. Barrett,
Everyone. Yes.
you'll stay away, right?
Yes.
Because you know what will happen if you violate the order, correct?
Yes. I have a history of that.
You'll be back in jail.
I have a history of that too. Yes.
Right.
Well aware.
All right. At this time, I am going to enter the order.
When he said he had a history of jail, is that only from this incident or are there other incidents?
Not worried about that. I'm worried about what's
Okay.
happened here.
All right.
Okay. We're trying to look forward and keep him from
Thank you.
coming to your property, looking for you or for your daughter. So at this point, I'm finding, Mr. Salento, that there is a preponderance of the evidence that suggests that your actions in the past have been harassing to the petitioners in this matter, Mr. Walmart and Ms. Barrett. And so I am going to enter the order today prohibiting you from going to their property at all. Do you understand that?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And you understand what will happen if you violate it?
Yes.
And you know that now Mr. Walmart and Ms. Barrett know what the remedy is. They will call the police, and you know what will happen to you. You get arrested.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
All right. So at this point, there is no reason for you to go to their property at all.
No.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. All right. I am going to enter a full protection order in this case. I find that there's a preponderance of the evidence that Mr. Salento is aware of the existing no contact orders, and he's not supposed to go to that property. There's no reason for him to go to that property. He has agreed that he knows he's not to go to that property. And so we will enter that order today to that effect. So, Mr. Salento, you're not to go to that property within 1,000 feet of the residence. You're not to have any contact with these parties. You're not to have any contact with their vehicle or their workplace. You understand that?
Yes.
All right. You're not to keep them under any kind of electronic surveillance either in any way. This order is going to be in place for the next year. Mr. Salento, you can get a copy of this order from the website here at Thurston County District Court. And you will get served a copy of that by the Thurston County Sheriff at some point. Any questions, Mr. Walmart?
Yes, I just have a few questions. I'm not really sure he understands this. I mean, just listening to the way he was telling his story and things, he seems very confused about things. And the fact that he's broken a prior restraining order 3 times, I don't have a lot. I mean, I appreciate what you're doing here, Your Honor, and all the help I'm getting. I'm just not sure he understands it. And he does live 1.5 miles from where I live. He lives on Summit Lake. We use that road as an exercise to run and things. I want him to be clear that he's not supposed to contact us as well. If he sees us running or walking down the road, that is not an invitation to engage with us. Again, that was one thing he did with my daughter. He thought they made eye contact, so he showed up at my house because he thought it was a sign. It is not a sign, Mr. Salento. If you see us walking or something on the road, it is not a reflection. We don't want contact. Just let us go. I'm just not confident about this because he's broken it 3 times. And listening to him today, talking about his rambling ways, I'm really nervous about his mental state. I've seen him get very, very agitated. I've heard that from my friends that he's at his house screaming and yelling. I know the police have been there several times. I'm just nervous about this.
I understand that. Mr. Salento, you understand you're not to have any contact with Mr. Walmart, Ms. Barrett, or Hannah Walmart.
Your Honor,
Understand that?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, I have
No contact any way,
No
shape,
way.
or form.
No way.
Okay.
I have a $500 million I'm working on. I do not need to deal with them at all, Your Honor. So yes, I won't ever contact them ever again. No eye contact, no wave, no nothing. Ever.
All right, Mr. Salento,
Yes,
just have no contact. There will be no further problems.
no contact.
If you
ever.
have any contact,
oh
you
yes,
know what the result is
I know
likely to be.
exactly what it is. Oh yes, never
All right.
again. Or
Thank you.
anyone else. I get it.
All right,
Why never
So,
again? Why never again?
Mr. Walmart, I understand, but we're not in position to know what's in his mind, to order all kinds of psychiatric evaluations and so forth. All we can do is put the order in place, and if he violates it, you have then the opportunity to contact the police, and they'll
Correct.
take the steps that they have to take. And Mr. Salento hopefully is aware that
Oh,
the more
God,
of these
I am
that
definitely aware.
he gets accumulated, the greater the penalty could be on him. So
oh yeah.
in terms of jail time and so forth. So that's something he's going to have to
Yeah,
address
don't
and understand. We'll figure that out. Not our job to explain all that further than what we've done so far.
No,
He's telling us on record, he understands he's to have no contact.
with anyone, exactly.
Right.
Anyone.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Salento. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Walmart.
Do you have a course of action for me to pursue some of these other things? Because that's scary. Watching him, is there any, I know why we're here today and I appreciate that, Your Honor, but is there any course of action I can proceed to feel safer?
Well, number one, the court doesn't give out legal advice. So I can't advise you as to any other steps that you may want to take in relation to that. He's an adult. He's responsible for his own behavior. And if the police contact him and feel that there's a mental health issue, then that's something that they can pursue.
Okay. And they have shared that concern with me in the past, so I will pursue that.
something they'll have to pursue.
All right. Thank you very much, Your
All
Honor.
right, Mr.
You're welcome.
Schultz, you're the petitioner. You go first.
Okay.
I am seeking this restraining order, this harassment and trespassing on my land and property and all this stuff has been going on for 4 years, and I just want it to stop, and like my papers say, I just want to live in peace and feel that I can go out in my yard and walk to the mailbox and you know, without harassment and not feeling, you know, scared.
All right, can you tell me what's been going on that scares you? What's the behavior that scares you?
He has followed me to my mailbox and harassed me. They have threatened, you know, he told me that he could pay somebody with a bag of dope and make me disappear. He has come into my house without knocking and went through my kitchen and my refrigerator and freezer, and I finally stood up and told him to leave, and he did leave. He came over to my house 3 times, I recall, and calling me out, wanting to fight me, and you know, and it goes on and on and on. They have put up a fence. They have tried to take some of my property. They have finally put up a fence, and they hired a surveyor. They said they had hired a survey friend and had their property surveyed, but there was no stakes put in the ground, nothing. And so with me and my stepkids, we finally had to tell them, we will place a lawsuit on you if you put your fence on my side of the trees, and we will place a lawsuit. And they pulled back and put a half a fence up on the property line. And so far we've kept them off the property line, which is I'm calling mine. And that's fine. If they want to put up a fence, like we said in our application, you know, get a surveyor, have it surveyed, registered, and then put your fence up. But this harassment and, you know, and coming onto my property anytime they feel like they want to is just, it's unbearable, unbelievable.
When was the last time they came onto your property uninvited?
This last time I called the sheriff, I was out mowing my lawn. I stopped my lawnmower to move my garden hose. That's when Harold started yelling at me to remove my fence post that I had put up. I ignored him, was going to continue mowing, and then that's when he came onto my property, ripped some of my fence post up, throw them in my yard, and so I went and got my fence post pounder and was going to put them back up. And then that's when they started in accusing me that, oh, that's their fence post pounder and I stole it from him. That's when I put everything down. I went in the house, and then I called the sheriff.
And when was that? Last week, last month, last year?
Last week.
That before you filed this action?
Yes. They're just obsessed with this property line thing. I wish they would go hire a surveyor and get it done. Last night, my friend and I were out visiting on my porch. They're circling our block, trying to look for a property line stake or whatever they're doing. And, you know, and it's just back and forth and up and down. And for Pete's sake, go hire a surveyor and get it done. They have put road construction cones out in the easement road. They put them up for a while. They pull them back. They put them up. They start little. Now they're 4-foot road construction blocking my access into my driveway. I have a plot map up there that says right on it that everybody should have access to their property off of Sargent Road. Well, I'm the only one that doesn't have access to my road, that's my driveway, that's been there since before I got there, and I've been there over 20 years. And you know, it just,
So how do you access your property if you're not from
I have to
Sargent
drive
Road?
around the cones, and then I have a new trail onto my lawn to get into my yard. Because I know if I just didn't obey the law or whatever and went and moved their cones, that they would just be right back up. That's how cantankerous they are, and I would get nowhere there. So I just been avoiding them and trying to do the right thing and drive around the cones. And my neighbors say, you know, ask me what's going on, and I tell them, and I wait for a reaction from them, and their reaction is, well, thankful he's doing that to you and leaving us alone, you know. And I know they're joking with me and, you know, trying to make light of this, but you know, this is it's horrible.
All right, Mr. Ellington, do you want to respond?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I'll be brief. As I've given the court the respondent's declaration, and you've read it, so you know these people were good friends. And Mrs. Weesey is a certified nursing assistant, so she's a medical healthcare provider. Back in 2018, they were actually going over to his house. They were helping him. They were buying him groceries. They would go through his cupboards and his refrigerator and to check what he needed from the grocery store. And they had a key to his house. So the entries that he alleges in his petition, those were all with consent. And so I'll let Mr. Weesey address the fence post in a moment, but all of the facts that he's suggested, you know, are within their lawful capacity. I did offer Exhibit 1, which is the property line, and you can see where his driveway cuts the corner across the front of their property. And their concern was that they may lose legal ownership of that if they continue to allow him to cut across that front corner. And we've talked about whether or not that's a real loss or whether it's just a technical loss, but it is within their property right. And we acknowledge that the property survey was not a recorded survey. It was done professionally, but it wasn't hired for recording purposes. Now, as far as his allegations, there is absolutely nothing in his petition or his testimony that refers to Mrs. Weesey. And so she is fearful that any order against her would prohibit her from working as a certified nursing assistant if there was an active restraining order in place, because she has to disclose that in her job. And with no facts being alleged against her, for sure, I would ask that the petition against her be dismissed. With reference to the allegations against Mr. Weesey, there's the threats of the bag of dope that he denies that ever occurred. His threats to kill is reference to him driving stakes into the ground to try to kill the large trees that are down the property line inside the Weesey property. But he's driving the stakes into the roots, and I'm not sure why. Maybe they're fence post attempts, but they're not healthy for trees to drive stakes into the trees. And I'm going to let Mr. Weesey address. Go ahead.
Let me ask, who's driving the stakes into the trees? Mr. Weesey or Mr. Stoltz?
No, Mr. Stoltz has been driving stakes into the trees.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
And then I'm going to let Mr. Weesey address whether or not he ever went on. I'll let Mr. Weesey address whether he's ever gone on to Mr. Stoltz's property in any recent terms. And Mr. Stoltz, I'm sorry, the Weeseys did call the police on July 1 as well, because when they were putting up their temporary fence, they were fearful that he was acting irrational and they weren't sure what he was going to do. So they called the police, and the police report is referenced in our declaration in response. And so, Mr. Weesey, can you tell the judge, in reference to Mr. Stoltz's testimony, that you came onto his property to pull up fence posts? Can you just respond to that and explain to the court if you had any role in that?
No, we have never removed any of his fence posts there, because they're on his side of the trees, but they're going into the roots. I don't want to fight over property lines. I've already had a surveyor survey it, and at that time I told Mr. Schultz that we could get it surveyed so that we would both know where it was for relatively cheap. I said, he's a friend of mine, he's a surveyor, he works for the state. I have put up concrete, did labor, no non-cash value or nothing. But I am willing to have it recertified, get another surveyor in there and pay for that, you know, as instructed from you.
Mr. Weesey, at any point in time, did you threaten Mr. Stoltz?
No, sir.
At any point in time on July 1st or in the last 2 or 3 weeks, did you go onto his property without his permission?
No, sir.
Okay, I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Do you, Mr. Ellington, you have any questions for Mr. Stoltz?
No, I do not.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Stoltz, do you want to respond to anything that was said by Mr. Ellington and or Mr. Weesey?
Yes, they said that I was driving the stakes into the trees. I did not drive any stakes into harming trees. I drove them in there to show my property line. I have put up no trespassing signs. I have asked them not to come on my property. I have told them not to come on my property, and I was not trying to harm the trees. And if anything kills them trees, there are vines growing up them trees, and that's what will kill them trees. But I had no intention of killing the trees, and so no there. And yes, he did come on my property he had to come on my property to pull up the fence post. So him not coming on, and as far as verbally threaten me, no, he didn't. And but you know, it just goes on and on.
I'm sorry, say that again. Knowingly threatened you, he didn't do that?
Not verbally threaten me, he didn't. And I didn't verbally threaten him. I didn't say anything to them that day. Your Honor, as far as him saying that they have taken care of me, we wrote in the statement that I've never been incapacitated, that I have never been able to take care of myself. They have never bought me groceries. They have never done any of that. They didn't have my house key. They might have known where my house key was hanging. And but the day that he came into my house, this is my friend that was there visiting that morning, and his name is Roger Chappelle, and he will tell you what had happened that morning that he came into my house.
Mr. Chappelle, how do you spell your last name? Tell us.
Tanya told me he had some trouble with Louise, Miss Louise, and I was sitting there. He had lost his spouse. We do a grief share class, and I was giving them some prayer and counseling, and all of a sudden, drunk Harry bursts in, doesn't say anything to us, walks past us, starts going through his kitchen cupboards, looks at his refrigerator, goes back to the cupboards, pulled out, I believe, a can of sardines, and says, "Are you going to eat this?" And Mr. Stoltz was physically, he could have push-ups, sit-ups, whatever at that point in his life. He's physically not been incapacitated at all. On the night of the cupboards that they claimed they were looking for groceries from the store, I mean, he's as healthy as he is today. I mean, we're old, but
When did this occur?
I'd have to say around 3 years ago.
A couple of years ago.
And I've been a witness to this ongoing thing and tried to encourage my brother to restrain. He does not want to be here today.
I think that I did not mention, I had another friend over, we were changing the baluster lights in my shop one day, and Mrs. Weesey came over to my shop. You could tell in her voice that she was not happy, and told me that for me to get my company's car out of her driveway. I said, my company would not park in your driveway. And I didn't know it was going. Finally, I looked out the garage door, and sure, there was a car over there in their driveway. I told her, it's not my company. And so she left. She came back again, more angrier, and said, "You need to get your company's car out of my driveway, or I'm calling the sheriff's department, and I'm going to get a tow truck and have it towed." I told her, "Go ahead. It's not my company." And she finally left, and come to find out, a short time later, this car that was parked in their driveway was some Mormon missionaries, friends that they knew. And while she wasn't at home at the time, they went out knocking on doors. And when they finally did come back to their car, she found out whose car it was. And you know, and they told her they were sorry that they parked their car in their driveway, and ended up shoveling the ice and snow out of their driveway for the apology. But yet, did she come over and apologize to me or say anything? No.
When did that occur?
Probably 3 years ago. And of course, my other friend that was, you know, with me, he was just like, holy buckets, you know. I mean.
Mr. Ellington, any questions you have for Mr. Chappelle?
No, I'll just have a few comments when you're ready.
Ellington, I'm ready to hear your comments.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, first and foremost, Mr. Stoltz testified today that there have been no threats made. And so that certainly contradicts some of the allegations in his petition. Additionally, he does reference and acknowledge that some of these incidences that are alleged occurred 2 and 3 years ago. And that's consistent with the declaration in response by my clients. There is no facts or evidence before the court of anything recent that shows any ongoing pattern of conduct that seriously annoys, threatens, harasses, or is in violation of the anti-harassment statute. And so the good news is both parties expressed a desire to have a certified survey done to put this issue to rest. And so perhaps, you know, if they have a little guidance, and I've talked to my clients about pursuing legally a correct property line survey and having someone communicate with Mr. Stoltz in a amicable, professional way, so that these two neighbors can just resolve this issue and hopefully restore the friendship that they once had. But given what's gone on today and what's in the petition and before the court, I would ask Your Honor to dismiss both of these petitions at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Ellington, I would have a question for your client, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
What about the reference, Mr. Weesey, that Mr. Chappelle made here about drunk Harry coming into Mr. Stoltz's house 3 years ago?
Are you talking to me, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yes.
No, that never happened. And when he called the sheriff just recently, he told the sheriff that I was drunk and harassing them and all that. That was just about a week ago. And the sheriff came out there.
3 years ago.
And 2 years ago too?
No.
Oh,
He's
no.
asking about 3 years ago when you went into his house.
No, I never went in his house 2 years ago. It was, what? When we moved in?
2018.
Yeah.
It was actually 2018 when I was helping him with his diabetes and his troubles that he was having with his medical problems, his insurance, his diabetes, his insulin. He asked me to come and check on him in case he went into a diabetic coma, a diabetic shock, because he was having a little bit of trouble with that.
We have invited him for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and he did also.
Yeah.
At the beginning of finding out that he was sick, I actually picked him off the floor and helped revive him. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And
I
we
want
were
to be
making
friends, and I am, you know, I'm on the road 5 days a week. I worry. But, and the fact,
Thank you, Mr. Weesey.
Your Honor, I have a doctor that I've been with, and he regulates my diabetes, and together we work, you know, through this, and there is no reason why I would have her, even if she's claiming to be a nurse, to help me in any way.
So your testimony is that in 2018, 2019, they never came over, never helped you with medical issues, never helped you with groceries,
No,
none of that.
no, they did not help me.
Still hasn't changed.
My health hasn't changed. I've had diabetes and you know, I struggle with it, you know, like all diabetics do, and I have medication. I do my insulin. I have good days, bad days, but nothing that anybody has to come over and help me with. I've always been able to go to the grocery store and buy my groceries. If I was to ask anybody to buy my groceries, it would be my good friend Roger, who's been my friend for years, and he would be the one I would ask.
Is it accurate, Mr. Ellington said at the beginning, that at some point in time you were friends with the Weeseys?
Yes, when they moved in, they came over and introduced me and introduced themselves to me, and we were neighbors, friends, and then they bought a vehicle from me. I was going to put my vehicle up for sale. They heard about it and they wanted to buy it. They came over, paid cash for it, bought the vehicle, and everything was going great. But like a year and some months later, something happened to this vehicle. I don't know what it is. And they wanted to come back on me for that. And the neighbor said, you can't come back on him for that. You've owned that vehicle for over a year. And, you know, and then it kind of has, you know, taken off from there, them buying this vehicle. And I mean,
How long ago was that?
that was in 2019.
How long have you been neighbors? How many years?
Approximately 4 years. They claim they've been there 6, but I'm saying like 4 years, I'm guessing. It was in 2018 when they moved in, and I couldn't tell you when, but it was 2018. 2019, I sold them the truck, and so we weren't friends for very long. I mean, you know, it went downhill from there, and it stayed downhill.
And you said you called the sheriff last week when you claimed that Mr. Weesey came on your property and pulled up fence posts.
Yes, sir.
Those fence posts put in where you think the property line is?
Yes, sir.
So is it fair to say there might be a dispute as to whether that's the property line or not?
There could be, but the neighbor lady that lived there before, we were very close. And when we moved in, we asked if there was any property lines, and she told us no, that they had planted the trees there, and that was bordering the property line. And so we've always understood that them trees were, that side was their side and this side was our side.
Did you ever see the survey that Mr. Weesey had done by a friend of his?
I'd never seen it. They would never show me any stakes. They would never show me anything. It was all a big secret. I don't even know if their surveyor was certified, a real surveyor, and nothing. There was never no stakes planted. And I even called them out on it. And when they were trying to put up the fence, that was one of my statements is no, you got to show me stakes and you have to have it registered. And I went up to the county and they were, I don't know if they didn't like what his surveyor showed them or what, but they were just pushing forward and saying, no, our property is on this side of the trees. And that's when I had to come to them with I will place a lawsuit on you if this goes forward.
Your Honor, just a brief response.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Ellington.
This is not for a proof. The informal survey that we recognized and tell the court up front was not recorded, but there were survey stakes. And then Mr. and Mrs. Weiss noticed that at some point they had been removed. We don't know how or why.
All right.
Anyway, again, all of this testimony here really refers to 3 and 4 years ago.
There are still 3 survey marks there.
Okay.
Mr. Schultz, you said they put up half a fence.
Yes,
Do you believe that half a fence is on their side or your side of the property line?
I don't know. What fence they got up, I would be happy with that as long as they turn and go towards their trees, the trees that were planted, angle back towards their property. If they go back on their side of the trees and put up their fence, that is fine.
Your Honor, our Exhibit 3 attached to the declaration shows the fence, and it's a temporary type kennel fence. It's well inside the tree line.
And that's fine where they got their temporary fence. That's what I've asked too, is they stay on that side. And the fence that they put up, I don't want to fight over this. We've only got so many years left on this earth, and I'm just wanting to peacefully get through them and get out of here.
Well, that would be the hope for the court as well in this matter. So here's what I'm going to do. I've listened to Mr. Stoltz, the things that you've testified to, what Mr. Chappelle has testified to, what Attorney Ellington has submitted, and what Mr. Weesey has submitted at this point, and Mrs. Weesey as well. There are a lot of issues here that are going to be unresolved in terms of, did they help provide some medical assistance to you, some other kinds of things? You're saying no, they're saying yes. Not dispositive of anything in this case. The issues about the property line seem to be the real key to what's going on here right now and why you folks are all in court at this time. And that is relatively simply resolved, not by this court, because we don't decide property issues. But I believe I heard Mr. Weesey say that he's prepared to have a proper survey done, registered by a registered surveyor, licensed surveyor, and provide a copy of that to Mr. Stoltz so he can see, so the parties can resolve that in some way. Now, they might not need to be face-to-face to resolve that. There may be an intermediary that's necessary to do that, but that sounds like that might be the idea, the best idea to kind of resolve some of those issues. There's going to be an ongoing issue, I guess, with the driveway. Looks like that's been there for a while. I don't know the answer to that. That's, again, beyond the scope of this court today. I do believe that Mr. Ellington's statements are persuasive in a couple matters. Number one, as far as Mrs. Weesey is concerned, I don't see anything here that would subject her to having an anti-harassment order entered against her. As far as Mr. Weesey is concerned, again, Mr. Ellington's statements are pretty clear. I do believe that Mr. Stoltz has testified that there have been no threats made. It doesn't seem to be a recent pattern of conduct, which is required under the statute in order for an order to be entered. I think, again, the key here is for these parties to find some way to work out the issue with the fence and the trees, whether they're on one side or the other. I think nobody should put in any fence posts until an appropriate survey is complete.
But they
So-
have already put in half a fence, so.
From this point forward, nobody puts in any fence posts. You don't put any in near the roots of trees. They don't put any in down at the end of the road by where your driveway is. We let that all sit and percolate until the parties figure out a way, to resolve it. And again, that won't be here. You won't come back to this court and say, I have a survey, we have this piece of property, this, that, and the other thing. That's going to go to a court of a different jurisdiction than this. So my conclusion at this time is I do not find by a preponderance of the evidence, Mr. Stoltz, that there is a basis for an anti-harassment order against either Mr. or Mrs. Weesey. So I'm not going to enter an order today. I'm going to dismiss your petition. You always have the right to file again. If as a result of this, you guys go back to your properties and something starts over again, Mr. Weesey does something else or Mrs. Weesey does something, you can always refile this petition if in fact there's been a threat or a pattern of behavior that is threatening to you under the circumstances. I think the parties have had a good explanation of what they believe has happened in the past and what needs to be done at this time. I say, let the past be the past. Figure out a way to work at least together cooperatively to figure out this fence issue and the driveway issue in the future.
Yes, because I don't want this to, you don't give me anything, and then 2 days later, the cones are back up there, because this has gone on before, since then, I tell them.
Yeah, the cone issue is a difficult one. I'm not sure where all that fits with this because
you can see on that plot map, the road should be going straight in, but for some reason, the road has been like a river, that was made that way. And if the road was straight, it would take up more of their property. So I didn't put my driveway.
take up more of their property, take up less of their property.
Huh?
It would take up less of their property. Right
Okay.
now, it cuts across part of their property, at least what I could see.
The road goes around their property. It should go straight through their property. Because of the foliage, it's being diverted from alignment, probably 20, 30 feet in places.
Well, then that's, again, a different issue. What I'm seeing from the exhibits that were presented by the Weeseys, it looks like a piece of the road of your driveway cuts across the very edge of their property. And that's looked like to me where the cones were. So I don't know about what else happened out on Sargent Road. That's a different issue. Again, not something within the scope or jurisdiction of this court today. But that's something that you obviously should try to get worked out. So, Mr. Weesey, I would suggest, I'm not ordering anything here, but I would suggest you not interfere with his ongoing access to the property that he's apparently been exercising for how many years you lived there?
Over 20.
Over 20 years, if that's been the case.
And I want this trespassing to stop. For no reason, no whatsoever coming on my property.
Your Honor, Attorney Ellington, Your Honor, I'm late for another hearing. If the court's ruled, can we stop the testimony?
We can. That'll be all in terms of testimony. I'm going to prepare the order at this time. I'm finding that there is not sufficient evidence to support issuing any kind of protection order at this time.
And we would ask that Mr. Pook be put in a waiting room while other parties testify so that he doesn't hear other testimony.
We can do that, and we will.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Somerville, you want to start?
Yes, I'd like to call my client as a witness.
Okay, Ms. Sky, Ms. Somerville has questions for you.
Ms. Guy, in your petition, you talk about the shower. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, on December 7th of last year, Lance asked if he could come over to my apartment to take a shower because his water tank was broken. And I said that he could. And I told him to bring a towel because I didn't do any laundry and I didn't have any clean towels. And so he came over to take a shower, and I didn't feel comfortable with this. I didn't want him to, but I said that he could. And so he came over and he took a shower, and this was during the daytime. And he was in the shower. I was in my living room. I was watching TV, and the shower was running, and he called my name from the shower. And so I stood by the bathroom door. It was shut, and I said, yeah, responded to my name being called. And he said, open the door. And I opened it just a little bit, like this much. So I peeked in, and he said, open the door all the way. And I didn't. I still kept it open just a little bit. And he said to get in the shower with him. And I said no. And he said, come on, get in the shower. And I didn't. And I felt very uncomfortable with that and very gross. And he was exposed also. And he said, let's get each other clean. And anyway, I just shut the door, and I went back out to my living room.
And was he someone you had been dating?
No, we never dated or anything like that. No.
Was anybody else present at this event?
No, just my dog. He and my dog.
You've heard that Jacob Pope is going to testify. Was he present?
I don't know who Jacob Pope is.
After that incident, did respondent harass you?
After that, after that day happened, he never said anything about that incident. He acted like that never even happened after that day. But yeah, he always made comments to me about inappropriate things. So he would say things like about going to his work and wearing like a French maid costume, or cleaning his work in a French maid costume or outfit rather, or topless, or he'd make comments about my body or about my chest. He would make
comments about your body or chest.
He asked if my boobs were real. He would make comments about certain sweaters that I wore, like that certain sweaters looked better. My chest looked better in certain sweaters. He would say things like, try to make bets with me, and whoever lost would owe the other person back rubs. He had said to me that he would prefer like a good hand job as opposed to oral sex. I don't know, just I don't know, stuff like that.
Did he ever call you excessively?
Yeah, he would call me. Yeah, he would call and hang up the phone. If I didn't return his call, then he would just keep calling.
And did he have any legitimate reasons to be calling you?
No, it never had to do with, it was always personal. It never had to do with the landlord issues, maintenance issues. It was always personal reasons.
And he's your landlord?
He is my landlord, yes.
Did he ever send a text saying he would do something?
The day that he came in my apartment, he said that he was worried about me. The text said, I'm worried about you. I'll be there. I'm coming over in 5 minutes. And that was on Wednesday, June 28th, the day that he came in my apartment.
And how did he come in your apartment?
First, he started banging on my front door. And I was working. I work from home for Regents Insurance. And then I didn't answer the door. I was working. I had my headset on and I was online with my coworkers and supervisors. But and then I heard him. He was in my apartment and he was saying, Jamie. And I took my headset and I took my headset off and I logged off my camera and I shut my computer off. And I went around the corner. By the time I went around my corner, my dog was barking. By the time I went around my corner, he was already in my apartment, inside my apartment. And he was inside the dining room and proceeding to continue to walk in. By that time, I was already around the corner and I had met him.
Do you know how he got into your apartment?
Yeah, my door was locked. The deadbolt and the actual doorknob. So he used his management keys to get in.
Has he made any threats against you?
Well, he would always threaten like to do welfare checks on me if I didn't return his calls or, texts on time, or, like he would always say that he would do welfare check on me, or threaten eviction, just things like that. I didn't comply with certain things.
Were those things he wanted you to comply with, terms of the lease?
Right, yeah.
So he threatened to evict you if you didn't abide by the lease?
Oh, well, no, I mean, no.
So let me rephrase that. Were you in compliance with the lease when he threatened eviction?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So what kinds of things did he threaten eviction for?
Well, he would just, I guess, hold over my head that, that was something that he could do.
And what kinds of things did he demand you do to avoid being evicted?
Well, I guess one thing, I signed over my car to him. So he definitely took advantage of me financially.
Why did you sign over your car to him?
Well, he said I didn't pay rent. I did pay rent. Just things like that. I actually signed over 2 vehicles to him, 2 of my vehicles.
And whose idea was it to turn the vehicles over to him?
Well, it was definitely his idea.
Has he done anything to your payment record?
Oh, he's manipulated my payment records.
How so?
Well, on one of the payment ledgers, he gave me credit for the car, and then he took credit off of there. So he did give me credit for the car that I signed over to him, and then he didn't. He received $1,000 in rental assistance, but he didn't credit the ledger for that. It's completely manipulated.
Will it show up on the ledger one day and not the next?
Mm-hmm. Yes. He's also charged me, I think it was the month of May, he charged me additional $700 for rent.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Benson, before I get to you, I'm going to ask a couple questions myself. How long have you lived at that apartment? I guess it is.
I don't live there. I've
No,
managed
Mr.
it.
Benson, you wait. I'm talking to Ms. Sky at this point.
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry.
All right. Ms. Sky, how long have you lived at that apartment or house, whatever it is?
I've lived here at this apartment for about 1.5 years, I believe.
And you've always been timely with your rent?
I haven't paid this month's rent, but I do have it. And I haven't done that because there's some issues with him specifically, and the ledgers and his rental fraud. So that's why, but I do have it.
how much contact do you have with him on a daily basis?
I don't.
How long have you worked from home? The whole 18 months that you've been there?
I've worked at this company since my hire date was May 19th
Of this year?
of this year. Yeah.
And prior to that, did you leave the apartment to go to work, or did you work at home there too?
Prior to that, I was just kind of odd jobs, I guess. And then my daughter was here, living here.
So would you routinely see him once a day, once a week? How often?
I probably saw him maybe once a month, maybe, but he would call a lot and text and things of that nature.
And did you accept his calls, or did you just reject them?
This last year, probably, I would try to reject it a lot and often. And each time I do, there's repercussions to that. By repercussions, I mean, I wouldn't get my dishwasher installed. I wouldn't get my sink fixed. My daughter still has mold in her room. My daughter's heater has never worked since we moved in. She has no heat in her room. I have noticed that it's way better to be on his good side as opposed to his bad side. I've seen what he does to his tenants. He has gone into his tenants' apartments and has taken their stuff out of their apartments and evicted them himself without sheriffs or an actual legal eviction. He's done that. I've watched him. He's a dangerous person. So I know how he is.
All right, let me ask you this question. In the incident that you discussed where he came into your apartment, by your terms, using his keys to get in, when did that occur? Did you say that occurred in June?
Yes, it was June 28th.
And when you confronted him in your apartment, what did he say, or what did he do?
I came around the corner and he was in the dining room proceeding to walk forward, still continuing to enter my apartment and come more in. My dog was barking and I said, get out, I'm working. And I had my arm up like this, to make contact with him to, get him out. And he took a couple steps backwards and he did leave. And I called 911 after to report that incident. It was frightening. It was scary. And then an officer did come later and took a report after work. I think it was either that day or the next day. That's something that he would always threaten, was a welfare check to come in and make sure that I was okay. And if I didn't return his text, return his call in a timely manner. And it was usually within a day or two. And, he finally did it. He actually came in. And
do you know whether the police charged him with anything based on that incident from June 28th?
An Olympia police officer came and he said that, I have a case number. I don't know the status of it. He did say something about a criminal trespass. He took pictures of my phone about how many times that Lance was calling my phone. The officer took pictures of the personal email that Lance had sent me. And for evidence of that, also Lance was calling my daughter's phone and hanging up. The officer doesn't have proof of that, of course, because I don't have my daughter's phone here, but he did gather some evidence of that.
Right.
I don't know the status of it though. And I can guarantee you that Jacob Pope was not there. There was nobody there with Lance. Absolutely nobody. Just him.
And you don't know who Jacob Pope is?
I have no idea who Jacob Pope is.
All right. Mr. Benson, do you have any questions for Ms. Sky before you make a statement? You're muted, Mr. Benson.
I'm sorry. I don't have any questions. This is just bizarre, but I don't have any questions. I just have my statement and my evidence.
So, Mr. Benson, now you can go and tell me your side of the issue.
Okay. Wow, a lot of this is new to me, so I just went with what was on the paperwork and tried to defend myself and have rebuttals on that. But But what I want to say is I've managed those apartments, I think, for about 8 years. I've been in property management for 19 years. I met Jamie in 2019. She was homeless and she was living in a vehicle. She told me she was wrongfully evicted, and I listened to her story, and I thought, yeah, it did sound like she was wrongfully evicted just from what she told me. She kept coming into my office and asking for a rental. And I said, you know, if something comes up, I would consider renting to you, but you would, you know, you would have to have a job first. Then she got onto the rapid rehousing program, and she said that she had that. And I said, okay, I would consider that. So I ended up renting to Jamie on February 1st of 2020 over at the Evergreen Park Apartments, which is just down the road from the apartment that she lives at now. So about a year later, the Evergreen Park Apartments were sold, and I was let go from that job. So I only managed just the Timbers West and then a bunch of single family homes in Olympia. A few months later, she said that the management was horrible there. She was terrified and scared. She was scared she was going to be evicted because I believe she was kicked off the program that she was on, the rent assistance program. So she was scared she was going to be evicted. She said, please, I really just want to follow you over to Timbers West. I want to be under your management again. And I said, you know, Jamie, I've seen your apartment. It's really trashed. I said, you would really have to like do better if I ever decided to rent to you again. And she said, yes, I will do better. I'm just going through some mental stuff right now. So eventually an apartment did open up. She had a little bit of savings, and she moved over. So she followed me over to the Timbers West Apartments. So she lived there. Let's see. Yeah, so it looks like, oh yeah, she moved in January 1st of 2022 is when she moved in. So then, you know, down to the accusations, I want to point out where she said that I called her repeatedly. So if you could look at Exhibit 1A, I have no idea what she's talking about. This is super bizarre. I mean, if you just look at the phone logs, she called me.
Your Honor, I object. I have not received any exhibits.
Is this something new that you filed, or was this your response?
This was my response, and so this was. I
was not served with any response.
I didn't know there was an attorney. I had no idea.
Well, then Ms. Sky should have been served.
It just says that I email. I need to email the court.
Hold on a minute, Mr. Benson.
Okay.
Mr. Benson, you filed those exhibits today?
No, it was on. It was last week. I believe it was Friday. I had just a lot of stuff going on, so I think I submitted it on Friday.
Looks like they didn't find their way to the file until this morning at 8:19.
And Your Honor, I thought anyone could email the court. I heard the other cases where people submitted exhibits, but are we supposed to serve those exhibits to the
other party, right? So they can respond to that. You've heard Ms. Sky testify to a number of things. Mm-hmm. She would have been able to respond to the things that you put in your documents as well. Mm-hmm. So I think Ms. Somerville is correct in that either Ms. Sky or her should have been served with this. So I'm looking at the file, and Ms. Somerville, when did you file a notice of appearance, or did you? I'm not seeing it.
I served a notice of appearance and I accidentally didn't file it. I was going to file it today while I was in court, but then discovered that this was a Zoom hearing. So it hasn't been filed, but it has been served.
And did you receive that, Mr. Benson?
No, I haven't received anything. I know that she's just a family friend, but I haven't received anything.
I'm not sure what he means by a family friend.
But just from what Jamie told me, she just said that her best friend Jennifer is an attorney and helps her out with things and it's a family friend. I don't know. Just
I'm
what-
not a family friend.
Oh, okay.
Well, Ms. Somerville, you are entitled to see these documents in advance. Your testimony or your questioning of your client probably would have been different or had additional testimony in relation to this. So the question is, since they just appeared in the court file today, regardless of what time Mr. Benson filed them on Friday, they weren't served on Ms. Sky or on you. Would you like to have this matter reset so you can review all those documents and be prepared to ask your client additional questions in relation to this, or at least be prepared for redirect testimony on her part?
Yes, I would prefer that the documents be stricken for not being served properly, but if the court's not inclined to do that, I would request a continuance so that I can be served and actually respond, see what he's written and respond appropriately.
It doesn't serve any purpose to strike the documents and go forward without them because it's just too intertwined. All the stuff here that's involved is just too intertwined. I'm inclined to just reset this hearing and require Mr. Benson to send these documents to you, Ms. Somerville. Let's be sure that we can exchange email addresses here so that Mr. Benson, you can send it to Ms. Somerville. Ms. Somerville, you can send your notice of appearance to him since he's indicated as of right now, he hasn't received your notice of appearance.
Okay, I can give you mine right now. Are you ready to write it down, Mr. Benson?
Okay.
And do we have an email address for you, Mr. Benson? Ms. Somerville, do you have that?
I do not have that.
Okay.
Management.net.
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. And I will advise each of you as well that at this point, all the documents are now available on the website, although as I've indicated, they just appeared on this file according to the docket here at 8:19 this morning. So you don't have to wait for them actually to arrive. You can check them earlier if you wish. So we'll reset this to the 31st of July. And if you have additional documents, Ms. Somerville or Mr. Benson, after you reviewed all of this, please file them with the court before Friday of prior to the next hearing, and send copies to the other party so everybody has everything available to them. Obviously, I haven't seen the documents that you filed either, Mr. Benson. I did see the documents that Ms. Sky has filed in this case.
Your Honor, I have another hearing on the 31st in the morning at another courthouse.
We'd have to move it then to the 7th of August, or...
Your Honor, may I just ask real quick, is there any way it could be sooner, on a sooner date? Because this prevents me to going into work.
We can do it on the 24th. We could do it on the 24th.
Okay.
Ms. Somerville, would that work?
Yes, that's fine.
All right, we'll do it on July 24th at 9 a.m. Reset this matter to 1 week to the 24th at 9 a.m. All parties were here appearing by video. The reason for this set over is to ensure that all exhibits are exchanged between the parties and everybody is prepared to go forward with all of the documentation, including the court. Service of this order will not be required because, Mr. Benson, you're here and you know that we're resetting it. And I've signed that order this morning. Questions? Mr. Benson, any questions?
No questions.
All right. See you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can get a copy of this order from the website if you need it.